Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Stacy Silva, and I'm a project coordinator with EarthRes Group, and I will be facilitating the roundtable today. On behalf of PIX, I would like to welcome you to today's virtual roundtable, Sustainability, a Delicate Balance. If you're not familiar with PIX, PIX stands for the Pre-Treatment Information Exchange, and it is based in the Lehigh Valley. The group works to bring municipalities, discharging businesses, regulators, and environmentalists, and concerned citizens together to develop, implement, and share innovative and effective pre-treatment technologies and best management practices through continued education and networking opportunities. Today's roundtable is the fourth in a series of roundtables that PIX has been hosting in line with their mission for shared information regarding pre-treatment. Before we jump into today's topic, I would like to just cover a few housekeeping items. Today's session will be 60 minutes in length. Any questions and comments that you may have during the session can be submitted via the question and answer button at the bottom of your screen. I will be monitoring these throughout the session and bringing them to our panelists for any discussion. Please put your cell phones away, relax and enjoy. It's only an hour and we have lots of great information and conversation that you're not going to want to miss. Today's session will be recorded and available on the PIX website so that you can share it with any colleagues or contacts that might not have been able to join us today. What to expect today? We have 4 expert panelists that are going to share their experiences in sustainability. We'll have some poll questions throughout just to see where our attendees may land in the sustainability space. And then we'll open it up for any roundtable discussion where you can pose your questions to our panelists and we'll have an engaging conversation. We'll wrap up with their emails so that you can follow up with any other questions that you may have. So to start, I would like to post that first poll, please. We're going to see how everyone may land in the sustainability space. I'll give you all about 10 seconds to fill out your answers, and then we'll jump into our panelists.
Yeah, we've got 71 people who voted so far, waiting on another 5.
Great. We have some votes coming in already, just a few more.
Okay, and we will end the poll and I'll share the results.
All right, let's see. We have a good mix. Many of you, 56%, do have sustainability plans or set sustainable goals for your organizations. That's a great place to start, but I see that there are still some that are not sure or don't have any. And I think that our first presenter will definitely be able to help expand our base of the sustainability knowledge. And so we'll just jump right into our first panelist. Let me introduce her. It's Victoria Minerva. She serves as the director of the Sustainable Enterprise Executive Education and Development, or SEED program at Villanova University. Joining Villanova in 2011, she earned both her master's in sustainable engineering and master's in business administration, while working as the assistant director in the College of Engineering's e-learning office. She is passionate about making an impact in the field of sustainability by helping experienced professionals understand how to create in their organizations by designing and incorporating sustainable practices into their business environments. With an interest in water resources from a young age, Victoria was a member of her high school's Marine Science Club, a summer intern at her local wastewater treatment plant in Pearl River, New York, during her undergraduate years, and a water sanitation and hygiene, or WASH, volunteer in Nicaragua during her graduate engineering program. She is excited to discuss with you all today how taking a holistic approach to water resource management is an integral component of successful, sustainable businesses practices. Welcome, Victoria, and we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you, Stacy, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. I did add a cheeky little note about my water resource management experience from a young age, and I hope that will serve me today in talking to you all a little bit more about sustainability, what sustainability means, especially for business and some of the organizations that we work with at Villanova through the program that I'm directing, but also through our sustainable engineering program that we have on campus as well. So I'm happy to be here today. Thank you, Stacy. And I guess I just wanted to start. I'm glad to see that some of you in the audience have sustainability programs and plans in place already, or maybe are just starting in your journey. So I'll try to cover a little bit of what I think sustainability means to us, to business, and maybe hopefully relate that in some ways to water and water resources. So I'm going to do this in the lens of actually the way that our courses are structured in our SEED program. So our SEED program is for executives at various levels with various experience that are looking for like fundamental knowledge in sustainability. So we've structured the courses where there's 5 different courses throughout the entire series. And the topics that we've chosen, we really feel like encompass a full knowledge of what it means to be a sustainable enterprise. So the first course that we focus on is the business case for sustainability and kind of understanding some fundamentals there. So in a lot of ways, the uptake of sustainability practices and integrating those within your organization comes from what we call like 4 business drivers, right? So making sure that you're enhancing your reputation and brand is actually what is a result of sustainability and integrating that into your practice, driving your growth, cutting some costs, and reducing your risks or potential impact of some environmental or social challenges that could be faced at your business. So that's our first course. And I would say that, the uptake of the industry and business community is really because of these 4 drivers related to sustainability. If we look into our second course and our foundation, part of my introduction, Stacy, was having a holistic approach to sustainability and some of the frameworks that are out there, which maybe some of you are using to develop your plans and goals in your organization. So we use a systems thinking mindset, and a framework that we use frequently is called STEEP. So it's the social, technological, environmental, economic, and political factors that potentially affect your organization. So you can kind of do a STEEP analysis on maybe a challenge that you're having in your organization, but also any solutions that you're creating, do that analysis as well, where you're kind of checking against all of those different factors to make sure that your solution is a holistic, sustainable solution. This is something that we applied frequently, and actually through my graduate work, Stacy, in engineering in Nicaragua, this was something that we used a lot. So thinking about water resource management in an area that potentially is water scarce, doesn't have a lot of access to water, but also there's not a lot of infrastructure support or some regulatory, issues that could be potentially there. So we would kind of look at some of the work we're doing with gravity-fed water systems in that area as a way to be both low cost and also low maintenance, right, for the local community. So you want to make sure that you're working with your local community members to get their buy-in to do any sort of projects that you're working on, and making sure that it is a sustainable project based on making it a long-lasting project. So that was some of the framework there in terms of systems thinking. Our next course that we talk about, and this is again all related to sort of like the trends that we're seeing within the marketplace and how we've structured this program. So our next course is designing resilient value chains or supply chains. So for a lot of organizations, and especially large organizations, supply chain management issues and making sure that your supply chain is sustainable is very difficult and very hard to track. So when we talk about greenhouse gas emissions, a lot of you maybe have heard about this, especially from the environmental space, and carbon management are what we term as our scope 3 emissions, which is emissions that aren't necessarily from direct operations in your business or your direct employee work in your business or any energy that you're consuming in your business. It's all of the other activities that you're having across your supply chain. So that's typically where you have the most emissions and most impact in terms of greenhouse gases. So when you're looking at some of these challenges with supply chain, you want to think about taking your supply chain from a linear model to a more circular model. So when this relates to water, I think about water consumption and usage right in your organization. Can you make that process be a little bit more circular? Can you take the water that you're consuming from your local utility and actually feed that back into your system? So instead of just taking that water and only using it once and discharging, maybe you can treat it on site or clean it on site and continue to use it throughout your manufacturing process or industrial processes. So that's our third course and kind of some of the framework there. Our fourth course, and I think this is a very popular topic and something you alluded to with our question today, is all around ESG metrics and reporting. And for a lot of public organizations, we look at the investor as a key stakeholder and the viewpoint of the investor, kind of looking at these reports and managing these metrics. So there are several reporting frameworks out there that your organization can submit and be transparent against. So things like the Carbon Disclosure Project with CDP, GRI, Global Reporting Initiative. SASB is the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board. That is more on a financial perspective. And then things like the Integrated Reporting Framework, which combines a little bit more of that operational with your financial metrics that you're putting out into the world. So those are some of the topics we cover in that course. And then our last course is really about the leadership components that are needed across organizations to really engage employees, all stakeholders, customers, and be able to change and transform your enterprise in a sustainable way. So when we think about some of the recent trends we've seen, right, there has been an increased concern among customers and employees on sustainability issues. And even at the leadership level, there's a report that came out recently that said 99% of CEOs are concerned that sustainability will be a key driving factor for their business strategies. So it is a huge, huge percentage. And we're just looking across the industry and all of your stakeholders. It's really important, especially to engage and retain talent in your organizations to be focused on these issues. A lot of employees, I think, again, another report said like 88% of employees are interested in their organizations aligning with their ESG values and contributing to that in some way. So when we think about what business is concerned about and where we are in terms of our sustainability journey, it is really a multifaceted approach. There is no one silver bullet solution for all sustainability issues. So looking at it from a holistic lens and taking into account all of these factors are really what businesses are looking for today. And in terms of water, just making sure you're managing your consumption, your use, and potentially discharge of that in multifacets across maybe that steep model that I talked about. So all the different factors in your organization. So Stacey, I think that was what I wanted to touch on. I don't know if our audience has any questions, happy to answer them in the Q&A as we move along.
Great. Thank you so much, Victoria. That's a huge and very vast overview of a very big subject. So thank you very much for touching upon all those great points. And just as a plug, I would definitely recommend the SEED program as a current student. I've learned tons from that program. So thank you again, Victoria. Next, we'll be moving on to Tom Pullar with EarthRes, and Tom will be giving us some more of the engineering and approach to sustainability. With 41 years of experience in the environmental field, Tom Pullar serves as our senior project manager responsible for managing wastewater and environmental engineering projects of all types. Work experience includes time as a permit writer for the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Resources and as a consulting engineer. A registered professional engineer in Pennsylvania, Maryland, and New Jersey, Tom is the engineer of record for more than 50 facilities, including landfills, transfer stations, processing facilities, wastewater treatment plants, and drinking water sources. His work includes more than 500 waste stream characterizations and site closures and remedial projects for manufacturing, industrial, and commercial facilities. Tom has completed more than 400 assessments and investigations, in addition to 15 major multimedia facility audits for due diligence and compliance determination purposes. He also serves as the secretary on the PIX group. And take it away, Tom.
All right. Thank you, Stacy. It's a pleasure to be on this. And just two things, keep in mind, I'm not old, I'm experienced. That's a key differential. And I also do have my graduate degrees from Villanova. So there, I get that plug in. And also my son is going there for his MBA. So maybe he'll run into you, Victoria. I appreciate what you were saying. And actually it was a good lead in. I'd like to think we rehearsed this, but we really didn't. My talk, and we've done this before, is a more practical aspect of the sustainability goals. My degree is actually in environmental engineering, and I feel that in my what I've been doing, it really in my career has been, a lot of it is related to sustainability. It's dealing with issues, whether it's a water supply, a wastewater that's got to be managed, solid waste, air quality issues. I mean, a lot of what I've been doing all along has been, when you look back, it's kind of, it relates to a sustainability type of situation. It is managing, what you have in an environmentally sound manner. So, and just the one thing, a lot of times people, there's all this sustainability, it's all really a bunch of nothing. But the ones that come to mind, and they are related to real life sustainability questions, are, I mean, one example is the Colorado River, which has been allocated beyond its base flow. I mean, that's real world, and you're starting to see that in areas in California, particularly. All of a sudden, these claims are being made for the water. The water is in such demand and such needs that there's a question of, is something like that sustainable? The Ogallala Aquifer in central United States, it's being drawn down faster than it recharges. And there's coastal areas, even on the eastern coast, where groundwater withdrawals it's allowing for saltwater intrusion and land subsidence. So, those are real world situations, and that to me brings it back. It's not just someone saying, oh, we've got to, save the planet and all that. There's real world implications. If you're running a ranch and you can't get water for your cattle, that's a problem. And if you're running a farm or a community and you can't get water, that's a real problem. So I'd like, again, what I really do in our practice is bring what those goals are to reality. And it kind of comes down to, how much do you need, quantifying what you need, qualifying what's required. Is it water quality for drinking water or processed water? Is it, if you're recycling a waste, is your feedstock suitable for your end product? There's demands being imposed where you've got water companies have to have a certain amount of recycled feedstock in their bottles, which is a great goal, but will the bottle, will it be safe? Are there going to be contaminants there? How do you do that? So you've got to also factor in what your end goal is out of that. You've got to also look at the source of whatever you're dealing with, your raw material, and how reliable is it. I can go out and drill a well and think I can supply all my needs, but is that well sustainable? Is it going to go dry? I can tell you, I drive past places on the way to work. I've seen drill rigs there, and I have a feeling that somebody's running out of water. So just because you put a well in, or just an example, but you've got to make sure that is a reliable source and it's going to meet your needs. And then if it doesn't meet your needs, you got to figure out, is it worth it? Do we need a different location? What are we going to do about that? And then also, it's a big O, by the way, is what are the regulatory requirements of what you want to do? Pennsylvania has certain requirements, and you may have a waste product that is as perfect, perfect material, raw material for your process, but you've got to get approvals for it. You may need an air permit for processing, a waste permit for processing and beneficial use. So there we go. Sorry, I failed. I thought I had turned everything off. So those are sort of the realities of, again, you could have the best thing in the world, but you can't just go out and do it. You need to get certain approvals. So with that, to me, a key is identifying the driving force for your project. Is it regulatory? Some projects, the state, there's some regulatory agency making you clean up your discharge, reduce your discharge volume. It could be a stream discharge. It could be a pre-treatment discharge to a sewage authority. You need to identify, obviously, what the regulatory aspects are of it. You need to identify the economics. That is, even though there are a lot of goals that are established, and there's others on this panel that could speak to it more, the great goals also eventually come down to bottom line. And you've got to make sure that what you're doing is sustainable from an environmental standpoint and resources, but also that it's cost reasonable. I'll say, not necessarily even cost effective, but cost reasonable. One thing, just two projects that we've worked on that I think really tie this together. One is a bottling facility that was they're actually taking public water and they use it in their process. They treat it and they use reverse osmosis to treat that water for then use in their process. The reject was discharged to the stream, and we got them approval to do that. They're in an area without the benefits of sewer. It turns out that the discharge limits became more stringent, and we looked at different alternatives, and this is one I'm really kind of proud of. They came up with an alternative that wasn't necessarily the cheapest, but it showed good water stewardship. So they are actually taking that concentrate and concentrating again. So they are wringing out more water. They're using that back in their process, and they'll have to haul some waste. It's not a 100% zero loop type or 100% closed loop system. And then they do haul the rest off. But the fact is that they're reclaiming, it might be 200 gallons a minute of water that was going to be discharged to the stream. And that's one I'm proud of. It's actually still ongoing, but it was a very interesting process. I'll be honest, going along, I had the lowest cost option. we actually started on it, and then their corporate people came in and said, no, this is better water stewardship. So credit to them, and I think you're going to see a lot of that moving forward. The other was one where a facility was sited and didn't really have any public water. They drilled wells, and they're in a mine impacted area. They drilled wells, the water quality was horrible, as you can imagine. They ended up using that mine impacted water. They were able to treat it, meet their needs. And so they were removing the mine water, treating it, using it in their process. Their wastewater, they treated and discharged to the watershed. And they actually, the net balance was they were improving water quality in the watershed. They actually got a grant to do that, to help them offset the cost. So it's using an impacted water supply that wasn't ordinarily usable, but they were willing to make the investment. So those are the type of projects that we see coming. It's just that there's more and more demand for a lot of these things, and you're going to have to look for alternatives, and those alternatives need to be sustainable. So with that, again, questions will be available for questions. But Stacy, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Tom. Those are great examples, and I think it gave everyone a really good idea of different ways that companies and businesses can start thinking more sustainable and outside of the traditional box while still having cost savings. So thank you. Next up is Bruce Christman. He is with Untitled Engineering and is a licensed architect and lead accredited professional. He joined NTEC in June of 2021 as the Director of Sustainability to assist the firm in promoting and implementing sustainable strategies. Driven by his passion for sustainable design, he has been actively promoting and incorporating sustainable design principles on projects for over 20 years. Along with many successful lead and sustainable consulting projects, Bruce has been published in industry publications and has made a special guest appearance on the local Berks County Television, BC TV, discussing energy efficiency strategies. In 2008, he led a delegation to China to help promote sustainable design and building efficiency strategies. Welcome, Bruce.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I kind of bring a different perspective to sustainability, being an architect. And, you know, I've had people in the past ask me, why did I join an engineering firm if I'm an architect? And I think it goes in, I've known Untitled for quite some time now, and I've always thought they're the best kept secret in terms of what they do from the energy and sustainability dynamic. There's just not a lot of promotion of it. It's just what they do at their core in terms of energy, utilities, the oil and gas, just regular MEP. So part of my goal with you know, Untitled Engineering is kind of help promote that and you know, get the word out, because it is very important. But also it's just as important to kind of live the brand, you know, kind of follow that all the way through, as we were talking about earlier with a couple of the other panelists. I started sustainability probably back, I shouldn't say started, I've always had that kind of in my core. It just kind of runs in the family for some reason. Back in the early 2000s is when kind of first got on the radar, when, you know, the lead dynamic kind of came out, and joined several different organizations. And it was really interesting back then. There was a lot of focus on sustainability, doing the right things. A lot of people's hearts and minds were in the right location. There was a big wave with the whole lead dynamic, and I worked on several lead projects back there. However, there was a drop off in the industry because there was a misnomer out there that lead was more expensive, or just sustainability in general was more expensive than regular construction. And besides government and some educational projects, the whole lead and a lot of the sustainable strategies kind of dipped off. And I'm happy to see recently that there is a push, a different wave coming. And I think comparing and contrasting the two, there is a business case. It's always been there, but there's a better business case now that businesses can make to make money offer this at low cost, if at zero cost to the end consumer, whether it's buildings or other types dynamics. And more importantly, Wall Street seems to be backing this with a lot of the investments. You hear a lot of different political dynamics going on out there about sustainability, both for and against it. However, if you follow where Wall Street is investing, there's a lot of good investments going on with sustainable different projects out there. You know, whether it's renewables or else. Way back in the early 2000s, ExxonMobil, who's never really invested in too much regarding sustainability, whether it's solar, wind, or other types of renewables, they started dumping a lot of money into algae, so to speak. And that really didn't catch anybody's eyes back in the early 2000s. But one of my colleagues said, watch this, because it's one of the best renewable resources we can get. There's a lot of potential here. And you're starting to see that come to fruition almost 20 years later with some of the newer technologies. And a lot of it's just bio-based. So it's just very intriguing investments 20 years ago that really weren't on anybody's radar because we were focusing on wind, solar, and the other dynamics are going to lead the way. Kind of the same dynamic with electric cars. Right now, everybody's focusing on EV. From what we're hearing from our colleagues too, the fuel cell might even kind of leapfrog that. If you look out in California, Japan, South Korea, and even Germany, they're really leading the way with hydrogen fuel cell technology. And there's also a lot of potential with that, with kind of bigger organizations that consume a lot of energy because it's much more efficient, and the byproduct of that is water at the end of the day. So I think moving forward, education is the key to kind of keep changing the hearts and minds. Change is hard when it comes to sustainability, and it even comes down to our daily lives, is how do we make sustaining change? We've been so conditioned to kind of not think about, what we throw into the trash. Thus we have our plastic problem and other problems here today. I credit my wife. She's really taken it a step further. We kind of joke around. A couple of Christmases ago, she bought a whole bunch of packs of metal straws for everybody. Before it was, became an issue, she's like, why are we just throwing these in the garbage? And then, a year later, we see, YouTube videos about, straws and, turtles' noses and all the disgusting things that you see out there in the Pacific garbage patch. So I do feel very encouraged with the investment that's going on. The focus that we're doing here at NTEC with some of the energy savings projects that we're focused on. How can we implement strategies to create energy savings and have that energy savings pay for additional projects that help the environment or help further energy savings or further savings for different institutions. So definitely a lot of encouraging focuses out there, not only for our organization at NTEC, but our clients with different projects that we're working on.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Bruce. You gave us a great oversight of current trends and things that I know I wasn't aware of. So I think you brought some great information to our attendees. Thank you very much. Next, I would like to do another poll before we have our last panelists give some other information about sustainability. And this poll is the biggest driver for any of your sustainability plans and your goals. I'm interested to see what might be driving these type of initiatives at your organizations. So again, we'll give you about 10 seconds to answer, and then we'll see what we come up with.
Okay, you got 68% of the people who participated so far.
All right, we have about 68%. Give it another second or two to see if anyone else wants to contribute and see what we have. Okay. Wow, it's pretty even for those first two. We have our stakeholders and customers and regulatory requirements. I was kind of thinking that might have been a pretty big driver, and cost savings and supply chain. Great. All right, well, the next panelists that we have, I think will be able to touch upon many of these different aspects for sustainability. We have Victoria Emerick, and she is a PhD in biochemistry and has certifications in project change management, as well as Lean and Six Sigma. Over the last 25 years, she's focused on strategic operations, continuous improvement, and enterprise level project planning and management. In her current role as the Global Head of Sustainability Strategy and Operations, Victoria is responsible for developing innovative approaches to advance ESG sustainability awareness, commitments, efforts, and investments across the global Bristol-Myers Squibb enterprise. She is the chair-elect of the Sustainability One Council Executive Committee for the Conference Board, a member of the Biopharma Sustainability Roundtable, Sustainability Leadership Forum, IFPMA Working Group for ESG, and the CSR Board, and has served as the BMS leader for engagements involving the UN Global Compact, including the LEAD 2030 collaboration with One Young World and the UN Young SDG Innovators Program. Welcome, Victoria, and we're looking forward to what you have to say.
Thank you, Stacy. I appreciate it. I'm going to do my best to keep my comments brief, because I think there's some really great questions that you have ready for us, and I'm kind of excited to get to this, to be perfectly honest. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk to everyone. I, on the panel, represent the industry, one of the industries who's a fairly significant consumer of water. We're not Pepsi and Coke, but the biopharmaceutical industry is actually quite up there in our consumption of water, particularly high quality water. So at Bristol-Myers Squibb, we are, for sustainability in the context for us, is the work needed to increase resiliency, reduce risk, and leverage opportunities to benefit our patients, our shareholders, our stakeholders, and society, to the point where we have it incorporated into our formal commitment, in where we take our commitment to economic, social, and environmental sustainability seriously, extending this expectation to our partners and our suppliers. So speaks to the question and the one option to our supply chain. We're very actively engaged with managing sustainability, both within our internal value chain and across our upstream and downstream supply chain. I will say that for folks that aren't familiar with sustainability, in 1987, sustainability was defined as the capacity to meet the needs of current generations without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Also in 1987, Bristol-Myers Squibb announced what at the time they called the Pledge, which was our company's commitment to economic progress, environmental stewardship, and social responsibility. So we've been at this for a very long time, particularly within our sector, within the biopharma industry. We started announcing our environmental performance publicly in 1993. In 2020, between 2000 and 2020, we had public commitments that were time-bound, either 5 or 10-year commitments that we've been reporting on an annual basis. At the end of 2020, we had exceeded from a water perspective, exceeded our commitment to water, reducing our water consumption. And we reached a reduction of water consumption across our global enterprise by almost 15%. We also completed the beginning of what is the creation of comprehensive water balance maps. The project was called Project Water Compass, and we completed that across all of our, at the time, Bristol-Myers Squibb, major manufacturing and other significant sites that are in our reporting network globally. Now, in 2020, we purchased a company called Celgene. We also and started to integrate them into our network. Also manufactures pharmaceuticals, and we also had COVID. So a lot of things hit us simultaneously. But one thing that did not change was our commitment to providing high quality products to our patients, to ensure that we are helping our patients prevail over serious disease. And one of the challenges that we have is, if you are a patient who requires a pharmaceutical product that is injectable or is a biologic, you've heard the immunotherapies, the biologics, these are all very high water use. And it's high quality water. So our manufacturing operations require a significant amount of water. We have to manage that, and we do that with our sustainability commitments. And what we did in 2020 was change our mindset from these time-bound goals to aspirational commitments. So we set 2030, and 2040 commitments to help us look long-term, because this is really what the difference between corporate social responsibility and corporate sustainability is: time in a fundamental way. It's thinking really long-term. And when we set our long-term commitments, we committed to setting science-based targets. We had started the process, our entire envelope changed. We had to make that pivot. So we will have our science-based targets approved and enacted by 2024. We will purchase 100% of our renewable electricity globally from renewable sources by 2030. By 2040, we will achieve net neutrality in our scope 1, which is direct, and scope 2, which is indirect greenhouse gas emissions. Reach the target of zero waste to landfill across our global network by 2040. Ensure 100% of the vehicles in our corporate fleet are electric or non-emission generating. And finally, and importantly, which will be an interesting response to this, is achieve what we call equitable water use. And when we took this to our CEO, he asked me, what in the world does that mean? That sounds very squishy. I don't like that. And we're challenged, and I'll be interested to see if you get any feedback today. On equitable water use, when we built this commitment, we were thinking about it as this hybrid between the net zero commitment of GHG emissions and circular economy on waste. How do we reduce the amount of water we're using while simultaneously finding ways to reuse, repurpose water within our operations and water that comes out of from our wastewater? And how are we treating our wastewater to make sure that it is, if we're using a lot, we're sending out a lot, is it clean? Can it be repurposed? Can we put it back into, into circulation in the economy or around us? So I will stop there, and given the time, and Stacy, let you kind of pick up with the questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Victoria. Those were a great insight. It sounds like I wanted to start with a question for you, Victoria, and then we're going to open it up for the entire panel too as well. But one thing that struck me is you're at BMS, they have such a vast time period that they've been working on sustainability. So you do have a very developed program there. Do you have any insight for businesses or organizations that are more at the forefront of just starting that, how they might start that process, or and also to other panelists as well. But I would like to start with Victoria if you had anything, and then we'll jump around.
Sure. I think certain ways, and it's come up, and Bruce touched on some of the things that are very important to me as well, as did Tom, on what's driving sustainability in corporations today. It was originally goodwill back in the 90s. No one was forcing us to do this. It was goodwill. We were doing it because it was the right thing to do. We will continue doing it because it's the right thing to do. And that mindset becomes in conflict with, everyone will appreciate this, value engineering. Value engineering is my arch nemesis. I've taken ROI in our company, and I am training our engineers to think ROI as not return on investment, but risk of inaction. And the way that I'm doing that and the role I play, and if you're looking at driving sustainability and how do you keep that moving within a company, is risk. Get it on your enterprise risk register. Look at the legislation that's happening around you. Larry Fink, to me, the greatest breakthrough for sustainability projects is Larry Fink, who is the chair of BlackRock. They have $10 trillion of assets under management. 2 years ago, so every year Larry Fink comes out with his annual letter to shareholders, to the CEOs of every company they manage. And Larry Fink said, climate risk is investment risk. And if you're not getting a wake-up call from that, you're going to get a wake-up call in the US from the SEC coming shortly. So you need to start not doing it because it's bees and trees and it's green and it's wonderful and everybody loves it, but because it's a business risk. And if you want to be a business 5, 10, 20, 30 years down the road, for us, I want patients to get medicines from our company in 2050, which means we have to be around, which means I can't drain all the water from our Phoenix manufacturing site out of the Colorado River without a very creative way to manage how we conduct our business. I can't have wastewater, our internal wastewater treatment plants that we have at our manufacturing facilities, not be designed to ensure that we are not putting pharmaceuticals into the environment as it comes out of our plants, because that will shut us down. Environmental risks are the one things that will shut a company down. And you need to be on top of these as you're articulating this across your company. It is no longer sufficient to say it's the right thing to do. It's required to keep us in business. It's not compliance, it's survival. And there's a tremendous way to package this from a three-dimensional perspective that when you take this up to a leadership team, to the folks that are your financial decision makers, your C-suite, they get that. And when you give that package, the brain changes. The answers come out differently, and you get to move very fast.
Thank you. Any others? Bruce, it looks like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I would agree. I think where I've always tried to steer clients over the years is, one, look for the low-hanging fruit that doesn't take a lot of investment to do, and then also package that with return on investment. One of the things, a good tool to have is for any facility is a facility condition assessment, where you go in, identify the current state of your facility, and then you can use that report as, okay, if I'm going to change out my HVAC equipment or other big types of equipment, where's my payback? Or are there other strategies that can dovetail into, other strategies above and beyond that? So there are tools out there that you don't have to spend a lot of money to get started. And, it just takes that first step, because you'll be amazed when you go in and analyze your existing structure, even if it's only 10 years old, some of the things that you'll find and how inefficient it is. One of the things we always suggest, and we always used to get that kind of sourpuss look on people's faces back 2 decades ago, was building commissioning. Oh, it costs $50,000, $60,000. But what people don't realize is the payback was typically under 12 months for that. Yes, you're putting out money to see if your building's performing correctly, but the changes and fixes they find are going to make it run optimally, save your systems from having to replace it, from a quicker time period, but also give you a quicker return on your investment to making sure that major investment you made in your facility is operating as intended. So focusing on the low-hanging fruit and really understanding the current condition of your facility will definitely give you direction as to what to focus on moving forward.
Yeah, I'll excuse me, I'm going to jump in. Yeah, they used to do grants for that. They used to do E2E2, right? Process or pollution prevention and energy efficiency. So it's coming back around. And that used to be, we did it on small projects, and that was, you're exactly right. It just, you go in and you'd see very basic things, and it's like, if you do this, you're going to save this much money. And then what used to be frustrating, just from a personal standpoint, is they get ignored. They didn't want to do that. They didn't want to implement it. So anyway, a question I have for Victoria Minerva is there, one of the questions that I have myself is, and actually it's for both, but what platform is used to evaluate this, either what you're going to do or the success of what you're going to do? So if you're saying, I'm going to, I'm part of, we're a company that is going to be part of someone wants to invest in or have our money go into what do they use then to judge that, whether it's, I don't know how to, I'm not saying it well, but are you worthy to be considered on that list? Yeah, go ahead. I'll just leave it at that.
I get where you're going, Tom. I think I'm picking up what you're putting down. So, all right. So I'll answer Tom's question first, and then Stacy, I want to go back and answer your question as well about what companies can do kind of starting in their journey. So Tom, unfortunately, there's so many, as we talked about, like rating systems and indexes, especially in the investor community side, that are looking to kind of rate sustainability performance and progress. So there is now actually very, very recently a movement to kind of join some of these frameworks together. So things like it's the IR framework and SASB that is working through the Value Reporting Foundation, VRF. And now they're joining forces to kind of come out with one sort of reporting framework potentially that you can use to be transparent about your metrics and your progress. I would say typically we see companies early on in their journey start with things like CDP, GRI, and SASB, because those cover a pretty wide breadth of areas. I know a lot of companies also look to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which actually have targets set for each of the 17 goals in that framework, but that is like an international framework, right? That was meant for development across the world. So companies sort of have adapted to that because it's a widely accepted framework to look at in terms of progress and performance. So unfortunately, Tom, I wish I could tell you there was like one place that you can go, but there's not.
You answered my question.
Yeah, there really isn't. I mean, in terms of like that index side too, with the investors, it's like the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. There's like a whole bunch of other frameworks that folks use, and Victoria's shaking her head like, no, don't even bother, because there's a lot of things like they basically look at your sustainability report, whatever you generate, if you make that public information, and aggregate across that to kind of come up with a rating for each company to value them on like what their performance is. Okay. So it's not one exact science, it's kind of both an art and science.
Okay. Victoria was having a reaction to that, so need a couple minutes to
typing it in. It's fine.
Just typing it in. Stacy, I just want to quickly go back to your original question on what some folks early on in their journey can do. So we always suggest that sustainability strategy starts with business strategy, right? Look at what your key goals and strategic initiatives are for your business and align that with your sustainability strategy. What's material for all of your stakeholders, right? Do a materiality assessment where you ask them, what are the key risks, right, that are important to you? What are those issues? What's the key factors that we should be focusing on? Don't pick a philanthropy strategy if you're a water organization to give like students books, in a random location. Like, do something that affects water. Like, that will align with your business a little bit more. That will align with your customers and your stakeholders across your business. So that's what I would say. Like, it all really starts with your mission and purpose and aligning with that, and then figuring out there's some of those frameworks that I talked about, like we've discussed. The SASB framework actually has a materiality map where it can kind of guide you in some directions on what they perceive as key issues to be for your industry. So maybe that's a good place to start, and then kind of do some of that information digging across your organization.
One kind of rating system that I've seen with corporations too, and this is probably dating me, is the whole certified B corporation. I know that's evolved over the years, and it's actually incorporating a lot of social dynamics now too, but that was always a good kind of metric to see where corporations stood on the environment and other different social aspects as they, relate to sustainability and social equity.
Absolutely, Bruce. And especially for, I would say, smaller to medium-sized enterprises, that B Corp is a really great, and that assessment is a free assessment, I think, that you can do but it is quite intensive. So you have the certification, there's a payment for it, but the assessment itself, I think, is complimentary.
Great. Those are all great insights. Thank you very much. And I think that gives really good food for thought for organizations just starting out and places that they can look to for more information. Along those lines, that we did have a question come through. What are your thoughts on an educational presentation for local governments, utilities, and businesses to better understand what is sustainability and what does it mean? What does it benefit? And what are the economic benefits? Does anyone want to jump in on that one? Go ahead, Victoria Emerick.
I think it's very important. I think one of the biggest, one of your questions to prepare for was what are you most disappointed about? And honestly, and I don't want to fire anybody up, but I think it's the politicizing of environmental impacts. I think this is, and somebody else early, I don't remember if it was Bruce or Tom, talked about the educational aspect. I think that there's practical information about sustainability and the impacts, not just to the environment, but to human health. And it's to me, I live in the intersection of the Venn diagram between those two, and understanding why this is it's not a political issue on the environment. This is a very practical level of having companies stay viable, having human health stay viable, not just for medications, but I just read that 18% of the deaths globally were from environmental impacts, either from air and emissions in the air, or from poor water. And when you have poor water quality or a lack of water, you're going to see mosquitoes. Mosquitoes have airborne, are bringing illnesses in. There's all kinds of connections that are made between poor water or low water quality and survival of a person, survival of a community, a survival of our planet. And I think those are really important to have these kind of educational engagements where people can really have an open dialogue.
I'm just amazed that we're still having the conversation with clean water when the Clean Water Act was initiated back in the 1970s. Yeah. And why is this an issue?
Yeah.
But we are where we are.
Great, we are right at noon, and before we close, I just wanted to share my screen again, just in case, since this is such a big topic, I'm sure others have further questions that they might have, and our panelists have been generous enough to provide their emails. If you have any follow-up questions that you might have for them, please feel free to reach out. And again, I just wanted to thank all of our panelists for taking time today to discuss this topic. It was really great information, and I think we had some really great conversations and food for thought for everyone. So thank you again, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.